Hey guys, so today is a really important day for me because it is the 1 year anniversary of me having finished writing my first book, Be Your Own Therapist, which it's like my brainchild, my baby. It's a really important project to me, and maybe you've heard me talk about it a little bit here and there over the past year. Um, but I'm really proud of this book, and there's some things I want you guys to know about it real fast. Is not only does it teach you, as the title implies, how to be your own therapist by introducing you to some models of family therapy and showing you how to use those in your own life. This book is part self-help book and part memoir, meaning that I really made that an effort to chronicle my own experiences of using these models in my own life to show you a few things. One, how it's done. Two, that therapists are by no means perfect people. We still have our own stuff to work through. And three, to really I want to give people hope that the world, it can seem shitty, but there's stuff we can do about it. And by stepping into your power, learning how to be your own therapist, you can manage problems, you can overcome old patterns, and really become a person who feels confident and capable in their ability to make a difference in the world, because you are someone who can make a difference in the world. So what I want to do right now is read you guys the last chapter of the book. And at first my hope was that people would read the book, and the last chapter is a really nice wrap up of painting a picture of this is who I am now after all the work that I've done. But I guess what I really want to do now is kind of paint that picture for you of here's where I am now, so that you can kind of have that hope for yourself of, wow, I can get there too. I do want to get there too. I feel like there's maybe some urgency to this. There's a lot going on in the world. So let's just jump in. I'm really excited for you guys to hear this. So, chapter 25 is the last chapter of the book. It is called A Sign of the Times. If you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy 2, you'll recall how at the beginning, there's a fierce battle happening, and yet young Groot is dancing around, not concerned with any of it. The opening credits make the fight the background and put the dancing Groot at the forefront. While watching the movie, I found myself thinking how well this captured the ideal of childhood. Kids shouldn't have to worry about grown-up stuff. They should get to have fun, chase after butterflies, and just be kids. Kids are so much smarter and more intuitive than many grown-ups give them credit for, and I'm going to return to this point momentarily. First, I want to talk about the way technology has changed both the world we live in and how we relate to each other. Some of the earliest communication technology was the radio, around the late 1800s or early 1900s. During that time, families would huddle around their radio morning and night because it was how they got their news and entertainment. It's important to keep in mind that every outdated technology, as many consider radio, was new at one point. When it was new, it was a big deal. It was live, so people had to be there when it aired or they'd miss it. When TV was invented in the late 1920s, it was the next big thing, and shows also aired live. If a family wanted to watch a show, they had to be sitting together at the time it was scheduled to come on. There was no TiVo or DVR, no Hulu or Netflix or the internet back then. If you missed part or all of the show, you'd have to try to catch the rerun later that week or during the show's off-season. Now, with all the rapidly advancing technology we have today, people can watch shows or movies on many different devices and at any time they please. This is very convenient, but it detracts from family bonding. Every person in a household could have their own smartphone and watch their own shows on their own schedule with little to no interaction with their family members. This is not ideal. Cell phones are convenient for so many things, but they're not making us more connected. Before cell phones, people had to make solid plans to hang out with each other. You'd plan to meet in a specific location, at a specific time, and you'd tell the other person what you'd be wearing so they could find you more easily. If you were running late, there was no way to let them know until you got there. With cell phones, we can all blow each other off. People drive themselves crazy watching someone who's not responding to their texts be active on social media. We seem to want and shy away from real connection at the same time, because even though it's now easier than ever to be connected, we're profoundly lonely. Sure, in many ways, our current technology is great, but it's not better than real human connection. There's something so healing about having a face-to-face conversation with someone. They see you, and we all want to be seen. It's hardwired into us. It's my goal to help you have these healing conversations in more parts of your life, because it's the best shot we have at healing the world. We are an extraordinarily lonely society. We're ashamed of our pain, and we often think we have to hide it away. I'm here to help you find some frameworks that help you make sense of your pain and find purpose in it. To have the conversations that will build the connection we all want and need. To loop back to my above point, every generation has had angry kids. Now, though, kids can do something about it. They have access to technology that gives them a platform to voice their rage and find out things for themselves that school doesn't teach us. Kids have always been smart and had opinions, but they weren't always appreciated or even allowed to share them. My parents talk about how in their families growing up, kids were told what to do, and obedience was just expected. There was little to no room for debate. When my grandparents talk about their childhood, it was a lot of chores, and their parents believed, as many did at the time, that kids were meant to be seen and not heard. It feels like a safe bet to imagine that they would have liked a different experience. The fact of the matter is, every generation thinks that they had it harder than the people that came after them. It's not a pissing contest. We all have our own hurts. Kids should just get to be kids, but we live in a world that seems so insistent on tearing people down that we need the angry kids to get involved. Like my own experience of being a kid, their fresh eyes can see things the adults either can't or won't see, and they're becoming less and less afraid to call bullshit. We seem to have reached a point where today's youth don't feel like our government can uphold its promises, so they're doing what they can to change the status quo. Now, a lot of people have a victim mentality, but really, humans have so much power. You are not simply a citizen of your country. You are a co-creator of your society. The idea of reciprocal interaction here means that you influence your society as it influences you. If enough of us put good out into the world, not for what you can get out of it, but because it's more necessary than ever before, we can live in a happier, more connected, and caring culture. It's possible, but enough of us have to care and know that we matter. Each and every one of us is valuable enough to help tip the scales, and I hope by now you're willing and able to believe that about yourself. I'm not the biggest fan of conspiracy theories. That said, sometimes there just seems to be so much evidence that it seems less like a conspiracy theory and more like, well, a conspiracy. I was listening to Danielle Laporte's podcast, Lightwork, and in episode 4 or maybe 5, she speaks candidly and passionately about the ways a handful of disgustingly rich people are raping and pillaging Mother Earth. Those are her words, though I do agree completely with the sentiment. It's really messed up. For a long while, I didn't want to believe that there were people who could be so greedy, who could feel so painfully disconnected that they didn't care what happened to other humans or the planet. I didn't want to think that things were as bad as they were, or that there were people who had that much power. I'm pretty convinced now that there are indeed some people with unimaginable wealth and influence who want to maintain the status quo because it benefits them. These people control our government by buying politicians. They control the food supply, our water, our health, our access to information, our broken education system, and the news, if you could even call it that. They instill fear and trick us into focusing on our differences, making us believe that some people are actually less valid because of the color of their skin or what's in their pants, when what matters most is what's in our hearts. I don't watch the news because it's all biased, and I believe it's feeding me an agenda that I don't want any part of. Our society's values are in horrible disarray, and I feel pretty certain this comes from the same people who are willing to poison us and look the other way, while people who shouldn't have guns get their hands on them. It's a lot. Too much sometimes, and I feel a near constant rage burning inside of me much of the time. Danielle explains the difference, as she sees it, between anger and rage. Anger is the feeling of, why me? And it's personal. It focuses on how things affect me as an individual, while rage is anger on behalf of all of us. It's an intense irritation with the way things are and a desire to bring balance to the world. I'm enraged that our society is rampant with these ideas that insist we're not good enough, that our value comes from our productivity, and that we should fear differentness. As a whole, we are overworked and undervalued. I don't believe we should have to work 80-hour weeks to make ends meet. Advertisers push products that promise to make us beautiful or whole, as though we're not already. Everything is a big mess. In high school, I had to read William Faulkner's Civil Disobedience, and it basically just went over my head back then. As I was writing this book, that term kept popping into my head, so eventually, I looked it up again. It's pretty crazy to me how relevant it still seems today, especially considering it was written in 1849. Faulkner was adamantly against our government, believing it to not only allow corruption, but saw it as an active agent of corruption, and argued that it was immoral to follow its rules. To paraphrase him, any government that attempts to justify slavery can be no government of mine. He even felt that he would be freer in prison than he would feel were he to support our government. He may have been a bit of an extremist, but I got his point. He goes on to write, "The progress from an absolute to a limited monarchy, and from a limited monarchy to a democracy, is a progress toward a true respect for the individual. Is a democracy, such as we know it, the last improvement possible in government? Is it not possible to take a step further towards recognizing and organizing the rights of man? There will never be a really free and enlightened state until the state comes to recognize the individual as a higher and independent power from which all its own power and authority are derived, and treats him accordingly." And by him, of course, we mean all genders. Now, I'm not necessarily trying to incite a rebellion, just to get you to realize the gravity of the times we live in. Our government is bought, and unfortunately, I don't feel that we can rely on them to fix the problems we're facing. It is up to us to decide our way forward. We are the people who make up our society. It seems pretty clear that we've outgrown the old ways of doing things. We have broken systems that only serve to help people who look like me, and it can't necessarily be fixed. But we can scrap it and start fresh, allowing compassion and justice to guide us. Viktor Frankl proposed a statue of responsibility on the West Coast to balance us out, believing liberty and responsibility to be inseparable values. There may not be a lot we agree on, but I think enough of us can agree that we're ready for a big, positive change from how things have been going over the past 50 years. We took a wrong turn somewhere, probably much further back, and it almost doesn't matter where. Wrongs of varying degrees have been committed, and we need to acknowledge our misdeeds and reconcile our differences. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. Of slavery, Faulkner wrote that such a fundamental immorality justifies any difficulty or expense to bring to an end. Whenever great things happened, it's because strong people made hard decisions and spoke up about the need for change. They kept speaking up, in spite of how others reacted, until they saw change. And boy, do we need some change. You may have noticed throughout this book that I externalized my problems as problems of a sick society. I want to make a point very clear as it applies to narrative therapy and some other models addressed in this book. The truthfulness of a view does not matter nearly as much as its helpfulness. It may or may not be true that our society imposes its unhealthy views on you and me, who may then go on to internalize them. If believing that helps you, like it helped me, then that's what matters. Externalizing these problems frees me from the shame of having a hard time keeping up. It creates the space for me to see myself as whole and capable. I'm not broken or defective just because society wants me to see myself that way. If I doubt myself, it's because society wants me to. If I listen to these messages, if I buy into them, they will wear me down and I will give up fighting the status quo. That's what society wants, and we can't afford to let it win. I've put a lot of effort into moving past doubt. For a long time, I doubted whether I had a right to share my message because I'm just another white guy. I worried that people would discount what I had to say because I speak from a place of privilege. That's true. I own that. That said, I can't help that I'm a white male any more than you can help the genders or races you are or appear to be. Narrative therapy takes into account the views others may have of me and how they compete with the view I want to have of myself. Some people will misunderstand me, and some will never like me, but I'm not worried about that anymore. One of the books I read at the beginning of this psycho-spiritual journey was Marianne Williamson's A Return to Love, in which she famously wrote, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. I'm done being ashamed of being white because of the actions of others who look like me. I'm done making myself smaller or downplaying my intelligence so that others will feel more comfortable. I'm done pretending like I'm helpless because I know that I'm not. My intelligence and my compassion are two of my biggest strengths. It's taken me a long time to own them and to see them for the strengths that they are. In her TED Talk on emotional agility, Susan David states that research now shows that the radical acceptance of all of our emotions, even the messy, difficult ones, is the cornerstone to resilience, thriving, and true, authentic happiness. She defines emotional agility as the ability to be with your emotions, with curiosity, compassion, and especially the courage to take values-connected steps. As a man in our society, I'd become so disconnected from my emotions because of the idea that men aren't supposed to show emotion or even have them. As a human, this caused problems for me. With the help of everything I've learned and shared with you, I'm now taking value-connected steps to create the world I want to live in. A world in which everyone is allowed to take up the space they take up, so long as they aren't infringing on anyone else's right to take up the space that they take up. A world in which people aren't afraid of their emotions, where they actively care about each other and the planet. Bees are dying off in record numbers, and if they go extinct, we're pretty much fucked. Susan also shares a South African word, sawubona, which means hello, but translates literally to I see you, and by seeing you, I bring you into being. How amazing is that? There's no word in the English language that conveys this idea. It has such a loving warmth to it that I imagine would help a lot more people feel seen instead of lonely. Words have much more power than we realize. We're often so careless in how we describe our experiences sometimes. It's so common to hear someone say they were stuck in traffic. But if you're on the road, then you're not stuck in traffic. You're part of it. The world is not happening to you. It's happening for all of us. Do you ever wonder about the people in the cars around you and all the stresses and secrets they carry around? I know I do. Do you notice a few of the same cars on your route and recognize that we're all just as eager to get back to our homes after a long day? We're not disconnected. Our actions have consequences, both positive and negative, and I believe we each have a personal responsibility to do our best to leave the world a better place than we found it. That's one of the things I'm most proud of having gotten from my parents, and it served me well in almost every job I've ever worked. I have a gift for systems. I notice things, and I think about how they could work better. I can't help which things come most naturally to me, any more than you can. However, instead of complaining about what someone else can do better, I can focus on what already works for me. Writing has always come naturally to me, and so it was how I decided to share my love with the world. My lack of boundaries has been a hindrance for much of my life. Somehow, I'd bought into the idea that I could lessen someone else's pain by taking it on myself. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work that way. And one day, during a crazy whirlwind of emotions and events, it broke me. Trying to carry other people's pain wasn't helping anyone, least of all me, and I couldn't do it anymore. I cried for the first time in a long time, and I just let myself cry. To give some context, here are a few highlights. It was the end of my second semester in grad school, and I'd found out just a few weeks before that my master's program in sports medicine wasn't accredited. This, after hustling for a year to study for the GRE and taking a few physics classes at the community college while working full-time to get into that program, and being horny, lonely, and confused in love. At that point, I was recently 26, and it felt like my life was crashing down around me. I know you might find it hard to feel bad for me, complaining about my white upper middle class hardships of grad school and romance. Compassion doesn't require you to understand my pain, just to acknowledge that I feel it. We're all so busy to trying to prove our pain to others, trying to have our pain seen or heard, that we don't really seem to see or hear others' pain. A week after my much-needed breakdown, I pulled myself up and in the direction of a master's in public health. Then, when the school mysteriously misplaced my application, it turned out to be a good thing because it put me on the path I needed to be on. This one, at the recommendation of a supervisor of mine, an MFT, or marriage and family therapist, herself. "You're so good at sitting with people in their pain as it is, I'm surprised you've never considered it yourself," she said to me. It's always hurt me to see others hurt, and for reasons I can't explain, but don't bother questioning, the ability to hold space for others as we feel these strong emotions together comes naturally to me. There are only so many people I can help in my career as a therapist, though, since I don't want to work more than 40 hours a week. The opportunity to help countless people take charge of their own lives lit me up, and it fueled this book. I like to think of it as my love letter to the world. It's the healthiest expression of love I could have made because making it required me to take care of myself. I dug deep inside, made peace with some loose ends, and now feel ready to let go of this version of myself. I'm not the same person I was at 8, 15, or 21 years of age. I've experienced a few major transitions since childhood that have had significant impacts on me and my worldview. I can't be ashamed of those younger versions of myself, though, because they had the same big heart, just not the same know-how. The struggle is often what teaches people what they need to know, and I struggled in different ways at all those ages. My struggles now are of a different kind. Now, it's me deciding to not continue letting self-doubt manifest in different ways in my life. I'm deciding to break free from my old patterns, at least the ones that don't serve me. I was just telling my friend and boyfriend the other day about the belief I used to share with the character from the TV show of the same name, Becker. He complained once that when things are going well for him, it felt like there was some cosmic rubber band that got stretched further. Each good thing that happened, the rubber band stretched further and further until eventually it snapped. Becker said he'd prefer for it to snap sooner because the longer the time between snaps, the worse it would be. This cynical view led me to chase away many of the good things I said I wanted in my life. I couldn't appreciate when things were going well because I had internalized the anxiety of a mother whose mind immediately goes to the worst case scenario in any situation. Now, I have a lot of things going really well for me, and I just don't question it anymore. I know I deserve to have good things happen to and for me. I know my worth doesn't come from how much I can get done in a day. I didn't know these things before, and past versions of me would have spent some time griping about not having known so sooner. Now, though, I trust that I learn everything I need to learn at the time I most need to learn it. People can be quite stubborn. Someone can tell you they've been in your shoes, that they have your best interests at heart, and that you shouldn't do something, but you probably go ahead and make the mistake anyway, because that's how we learn. We're funny creatures, really. We're the only living things that bother to question their instincts that are designed to keep us safe. You can't know most things until you experience them, so no, we can't do much to change the hurts you've already experienced. You can learn to view your past differently, though, and, moving forward, know that you are lovable, even if you didn't feel that the people who raised you didn't show it, or even feel it. We're all deserving of love on account of being human. It's not something that needs to be earned. Your past doesn't have to be your future unless you make it that way. You deserve to be loved. That said, I want to make a very important distinction. You are not owed anything. Let me clarify for a second what I mean here. The UCSB shooter, who I am intentionally not naming, opened fire on campus because he was tired of not getting recognition for being a good guy. He intended to be nice to women and believed that his kindness would be rewarded in the form of love and or sex. When this didn't happen, he got mad and decided he couldn't handle the hurt, so he took it out on others. The culprit of this sad, true story is the shooter's beliefs about how the world works. Our society views women as a commodity, but there's no participation trophy for being a halfway decent human being. Women do not exist to reward men for being nice. You're supposed to be nice because it's the right thing to do, regardless of reward. Often, the reward for doing the right thing is the sense of satisfaction you can have in yourself and your integrity. And I know that sounds like a shitty reward, but here's the thing. You are deserving of love and joy. Trust that they'll come to you. Good things tend to take time and hard work. Trying to pick your own reward suggests that you know better than the universe. When men decide that they're entitled to have sex with a woman, they're putting their own wants ahead of her rights and humanity. Not only is it a crime, it's an act that stems from the belief that men are fed that they can take what they want. It's 2019 and time's up. It doesn't work like that anymore. You have to take the high road, be a good person, and be patient because we can't afford not to anymore. Make it fun for yourself. A little creativity can help you turn being kind into a game so you can enjoy it more. I've come to believe in people's energies, and I know that putting joy out into the world makes it that much more likely to come to you. Danielle Laporte reminds us that joy is the most magnetic force in the universe. Try trusting in that. So, to be clear, I can't say what will or won't work for you. Even the practice of trying to understand the 11 different perspectives presented in this book is enough to begin to stretch your mind. You aren't suddenly healed or fixed now. I can't do that. I know saying you don't need a therapist is a bold claim. Obviously. It's an assumption of my view that most people are capable of finding one of these models to wrap their mind around and use it effectively in their lives. I believe that you'll know when a model fits because you more or less already thought of things that way. The model simply gives you a little direction, showing you how to put your values into action. I'm terrified of getting shot because of the world we live in, and the current debate about gun control here in the US never goes anywhere. We have to find new solutions to old problems. Solution-focused therapy suggests that the solution isn't even necessarily related to the problem, so it's not always necessary to analyze how we got here. We have to ask ourselves, what do we want instead? I know what I want. A world in which people can more easily identify their emotional state, be patient with it, and be compassionate towards themselves and others. A world where we can be honest with ourselves, with others, and live our truths without fear, shame, or violence. I want for people to know that they are as valuable as a diamond of their size, and that nothing you can ever do or say could ever make you any more or less valuable. You can cause terrible hurts or cause great ripples of joy. You can spread fear or inspire hope. There are so many more choices available to you than you may have ever been taught before, so I'm telling you now in case you need to hear it. So look, I could talk your ear off about my opinions, but you've got better things to do right now. You've got to go implement the stuff that you've just read. You now know 10 more ways to view things than you did before, and that's fucking powerful. You won't know how much that means until you start using these models. please don't just let this have been a book you read and tossed aside. I know everything I taught you works because it's backed up by science, 40 plus published authors, and personal experience. You may be scared, and that's just fine. Courage does not require you to not be afraid. It just means that you don't let your fear win. You don't even need to know the whole path right now. Sometimes, the metaphoric ball only needs a small push to get rolling. More than anything else, I hope you learned enough to be excited to take the first step forward, or really find some momentum if you have already begun. Each model intentionally includes more or less mainstream people as references for when you find the one or two models that really feel right to you. For many of you, this may just be a jumping off point, and that's okay. If you feel like you need more guidance, explore these other resources and look where they lead you. As I've said before, that's how this journey goes. I like to think of this book as a textbook with personality. I mean, who says learning can't be fun? If people really wanted, they could also go read the 10 plus textbooks on marriage and family therapy that I read. Most people probably don't want to do that though. And even if they did, textbooks can often be very dense and stale. To further compound the problem, therapy overall doesn't have the best image. It needs a little PR. I'm hoping to have adequately conveyed the idea that therapy is not stale or anything to be afraid of. It's an awesome tool in need of a little makeover, that's all. It can seem mystical, esoteric, played out, a ripoff, or manipulative, and it's hard to get anything good out of it when that's the angle you're coming at it from. Shift a few degrees. Look at things a little differently, including yourself. Know how to tell when you actually need professional help. Know that asking for help is a strength and not a weakness. And most importantly, remember that no therapist will do the hard work for you. They will ask you some great questions that'll shift the way you think and may provide some basic frameworks for effective communication. Even then, all change comes from you. You are the center of your universe. Things don't change until you decide that they do, and then further decide to keep going, no matter how hard it gets or seems to get. I don't believe in you can do anything. It's important to be well-rounded in school, but in real life and in business, play to your strengths. Figure out what comes most naturally to you, if you haven't already, and then figure out how to get paid for it. You can do so much more than you know when you play to your strengths. Find your muse and let her flow through you. Feel everything you must feel, because that's the learning that matters most. Speaking of feeling things, I want to briefly reference Kelly Clarkson's song Piece by Piece. The song is plenty emotional as it is, but to have American Idol's beloved inaugural winner sing that emotional song at the show's series finale while pregnant reminded us just how intensely Kelly feels her music. It is specifically because of the feeling she communicates in her music that people, myself included, can feel so connected to her. Kelly sings that piece by piece he collected me, and that piece by piece he restored my faith, perfectly depicting the process of growth and healing. It doesn't happen all at once. The pieces will never fit back the same way they did before. Rather, they can be put back together in a way that is stronger and more beautiful than before. At a conference for narrative therapy that I recently attended, two of the speakers taught us about art's refracting teams. Since pain, and especially trauma, can be hard to put into words, individuals will tell their story as best they can, and the arts team will create a song dance, or tangible work of art that captures the feeling of their story. It is then presented back to them to check whether they felt that the team seemed to understand their pain. One of the speakers also shared a powerful analogy of us as mosaics. There's a sense of fragmentation. No single piece tells our whole story, yet together they make us who we are. And the beauty of the whole is so much greater than the individual pieces. We may never be done picking up all the pieces, so find someone you can enjoy the process with. There is no done, there is only living. How exactly you do that is, for the most part, up to you. It took me a long time to realize that I feel things as strongly as Kelly does, and even longer for me to be okay with it. Seeing someone you identify with doing it, though, helps you to believe that it can be done, and it gives you hope. Hope seems like a scarce resource with all the things that are going on. I believe that we're connected to our planet, just as we're connected to each other, and Mother Earth is hurting. We're killing her because we don't want to feel our pain, so we shrug it off, and she can't handle it all. We need her though, so we need to make sure we take care of her so that she can take care of us. Us humans are our own greatest threat to survival. Earth would be doing just fine without us, but we can't make do without it. It's going to hurt for a while to feel all the things that we need to feel, but for what it's worth, it's not like we're hurting any less by displacing our pain. Sharing in one another's pain will help us feel more connected, and when we feel that way, we want to share our love and joy. We want others to feel as good as we do, and we want the world to help sustain that joy. Happiness begets happiness. Things aren't as bad as they seem, or at least they haven't gotten significantly worse. Don't get me wrong, there is, of course, a lot of shit in the world. There's pollution, corruption, greed, apathy, slavery, abuse, addiction, human trafficking, rape, prejudice. The list goes on. However, it's very easy to feel like things are much worse, and the reality is that TV and the internet have only increased our awareness of all the bad in the world. There were wars, disease, natural disasters, genocide, and human rights violations throughout all of human history. It's just that now we can see all of it at once. It's a big world, and when it all gets filtered into your newsfeed at once, it's easy to feel hopeless. It often seems like we're playing whack-a-mole, trying to keep up with all the problems, and the 24-hour news cycle just overwhelms us. Things are brought to our attention, like the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, the bombings in Syria, Hurricane Maria before it hit Puerto Rico, or the latest mass shooting. But there's very little follow-through. It's been more than 4 years that Flint has been without clean water. Syria is still being bombed, and almost a year to the day at the time of writing this that Maria hit and destroyed much of Puerto Rico, and it only has most of its power restored. My heart hurts to know that there are humans living in inhumane conditions because systems are in place to slow change and the ways that help is given. It's bullshit, but I can't let it break me. I may not have been able to solve these problems before, but I believe I can now, or, more specifically, help the people who will go on to solve these problems. If all I can do is spark hope, or help people be a little more loving, so be it. I have to believe that that's enough. I started writing this book with a snapshot of who I was long before I began. I'd come a short way on my own since then, but it was Brené Brown's Braving the Wilderness that really helped me to find the courage to trudge deeper into the unknown. Right around the time that I discovered her book was when I heard Lewis Howes interview Kyle Cease. Kyle brought up a question that he'd heard Michael Bernard Beckwith ask, and it was instrumental in my beginning this journey. He asked, "What is trying to emerge out of me that I have never been before?" He then went on to give an analogy about different types of caterpillars. One kind, upon coming across a wall in its way, might turn around and run away from the obstacle, so to speak. Another might decide, "I'm going to get over this wall," and it will dedicate itself to this goal no matter how futile it may be. The third kind of caterpillar will see the wall and choose to wait patiently for something new to emerge out of itself. In its waiting, it cocoons itself, transforming into a butterfly and outgrowing the challenge the wall once was. Kyle asserts that if we just took the time to slow down and get clear on where we're going, we too can outgrow many of our challenges. I cocooned myself in my parents' house as I braved my own wilderness, scaling back on social media and my social life for a while so I could revisit my past hurts and set myself up for success moving forward. When I finally stopped running from my pain, I allowed it to transform me, and I outgrew many of my old obstacles. I found a greater sense of joy in my everyday life, and I'm getting back to the childlike parts of myself that make me feel most like myself. I'm ready to spread my wings and take flight, unafraid of the heights I could soar to now, because I trust in myself. I no longer worry about who I am or what I have to offer. I know that I'm enough. This is me. Take it or leave it. Thank you.